All right. My name is Cheryl Matthew, and this is a talk I host every Tuesday at noon Pacific time. And we talk about all kind of topics related to thriving as we age. And that can be interpreted as a lot of different things. So I'd love to talk about anything you want to today. And usually we have a topic, we talk about that for a little bit, and then just open the floor to questions, comments. Um, I have been a geriatric care manager for over 20 years and have walked many, many, many families through the uncharted territory of aging and, especially that time between I'm not fine anymore until I'm dead, that time in there, that's my sweet spot. So I just wanted to talk briefly, briefly, for a short period of time. I didn't do a call last week because Nancy Carter passed away on Tuesday. And so I got a call in the morning that they needed me to go down and because we got the word that she probably passed away, but they weren't giving us a lot of information. So I had to go down. She lives about 30 minutes from me. I was involved with her care. So that was a couple hours before our call that happened. So Nancy Carter. So I want to talk about Nancy just for a minute and the I think really cool parts of this story, this completion ending. So Nancy Carter and I worked at Now Productions from like 1987, I think. So I worked for Now Productions for about 12 years, and I did audio editing, and she did video editing. She edited all the moments of peace, and she edited the videos, and I edited all the audio tapes, all your SAT tapes, etc. And I volunteered for Now Productions for many, many years, 20 plus years, mostly doing camera work and doing work behind the soundboard. So I worked with Nancy extensively. And then then I stopped working for Now Productions, and I was just friends with Nancy over the years. And about 4 years ago, she had lived alone, and she was about 88 years old. I think she worked until she was about 85 years old. So she was about 88, and I got a call that she was dealing with something at home, and she was dealing with like not being able to stand up anymore. So couldn't go from sit to stand, and was dealing with an infection. And so I helped her get her documents together to go to the hospital when she was ready for that. And that period of time where she really lost her independence for a bit because she couldn't sit to stand really informs my encouraging everybody to keep moving, keep doing the movement from sit to stand more than you need to every day. If you sit to go to the toilet, just do that a couple extra times more than you have to, because once you lose that ability, your independence is gone. Okay, so there's a blessing from Nancy. So we got her settled into a beautiful assisted living in Costa Mesa where she really thrived. And what was cool about Nancy is I was a little concerned about moving her away from her home where she had friends and things. So I contacted her best friends and said, would you go visit her if she lived at this place? And they said, yes, we can do that. So I said, okay, it's worth it, because this place was the best place I know. Best assisted living. So she just really embraced and cooperated at each step. She tried to do it her way for as long as she could, like most of people did. And then when it was time to take a next step, she just really cooperated, and she really trusted me. She knew I wouldn't ask her to do something different before it was absolutely necessary. like, hey, it's time to get a lift chair. She's like, I don't want a lift chair. I was like, okay, we'll just try it. And then like shortly thereafter, she was in love with this lift chair and practically lived in the lift chair. So Nancy also just embraced the assisted living. Um, I'm looking at my uh, battery right here on my computer. And for some reason, my cord is not working. So hold on just a second. Make sure it's plugged in here. I don't want to lose you. That's not working either. I'm at a hotel. I'm in Mexico on vacation. And so if it goes red in the red zone, I may have to stop for a moment and plug it into some other plug that works. Okay, so Nancy just cooperated with the different changes. And what she did is where she went, so she didn't have friends at this assisted living, and she just made friends wherever she was. And she would sit with new people, and she would just see who spirit brought to her, and she would just do her ministry. She would tell me about these friends that she would meet, and and she came really close to people. And then there were a couple friends that ended up passing away over the years, and she was dealt with that, and then found new friends. So she was amazingly flexible in this time of aging. So since about December, Karen would take her to. She loved musicals. She loves music, and there was a few times last year we took her out to some the theater, and so she saw some music. And we went last in December to some Christmas music. I forget, Karen would know the name, but she just loved it, and she just go on her walker and do the best she could, and she just loved getting out. Okay, so in about December, she started having a little more trouble getting up. Her knee was starting to kind of give out on her. And but she still just managed the last few months. She kind of had ups and downs and worked with physical therapy, and was able to get up until the Friday before she passed away. So Friday, she was starting to feel confused, and she ended up going, I need to go to the hospital and see what's going on, because it doesn't make sense what's going on. So they took her over there. She went to the ER, got everything checked out, and everything was fine. All her vital signs, every scan, everything. They're like, yeah, we don't see any problem. Why you're more confused, and they call it confusion, because she was starting to think about traveling, and she was kind of making up fantastical stories. So we got her, they did all the checks, and then they brought her back to the assisted living on Friday night. I go down there Saturday to see how she's doing. And she's about 80% of the time, she was talking about traveling and all these stories. And I used to be a hospice social worker, so I'm very, very aware of when people talk about traveling, that can sometimes mean they're getting to the end of their life. And so we actually got her from her lift chair and into bed so they can more easily care for her. So that was on Saturday. So I helped her get it all set up. And then Karen and my daughter Mackenzie came down to say hi to her on Saturday. And Mackenzie is getting ready for a trip to Greece. And Nancy used to live in Greece. And so they've been talking a lot about this Greece trip. And Mackenzie was there, and about 80% of the time, Nancy was talking to Mackenzie about this Greece trip that they were going to take. And she was saying, Karen and Cheryl, you could not go to this trip. Your daughter wouldn't want it that way. We're going to go. And she talked about getting her bags, and she started getting to the boat and all this stuff. So afterwards, later that night, I asked Mackenzie after we left. After I asked Mackenzie, how you doing? Doing good. And I said, well, it seems like Nancy's kind of like 1 foot here and 1 foot there, wherever there is. And Mackenzie's answer was, it seems like she's 3 feet there and 1 foot here. I'm like, okay. So I went back again on Sunday for an hour and a half. Yeah. So other friends of hers visited Saturday night, and she was like at least 80% talking about other stuff. Like it would, but then at the same time, she'd say, like, oh yeah, you're looking for that. It's in the third drawer in a gold bag. And she would exactly describe it to where it was in her room. So she was clearly here, but also describing other levels. Oh, Saturday, I said, Nancy, it seems like you're really talking a lot about traveling. She goes, yeah. I said, are you seeing JR? She goes, yes. I said, what are you doing? She goes, I cannot disclose this. I was like, oh, you can't. Dang. So I had told Arissa, who's her power of attorney, I told her that night. And so Arissa went to see her Sunday morning. And so Arissa asked her the same questions. You're traveling a lot. She says, yes. And so she says, oh, are you seeing JR? What are you and JR doing? And Nancy says, I am JR. And I was like, that's a mic drop moment. And so, again, that Sunday morning with Arissa, she was like 80% talking about many, many things, but not like what you and I would probably be talking about here on this level. So I went Sunday afternoon to see her. And for an hour and a half, she was 100% present with me. And she started talking. I don't remember what originally brought it up, but she said, oh yeah, I have this incomplete with that person inside of me. And then she giggled. She goes, I better get on that. I'm like, yeah, all right, let's handle that. Let's complete it. So she talked about that person, and I knew that person because we used to work together. And so she talked about, what she had been expecting. She wanted a apology at some point. That never happened. And she realized like the apology really needed to be inside of her. So she completed with that person, we did ask for the light and stuff. And then there were 2 other people that she wanted to complete with. And so that was like an hour and a half, completely present with this. And then at the end, she's like, all right, I'm ready for a nap. Okay, good. So saying goodbye to her. And she kept saying throughout the thing, she goes, I love your visits. I love your visits. Come back. And I'll have to say that a lot of times over the years, when Nancy would call, and sometimes she'd be like, she'd wake up a little bit confused, and she'd say, Cheryl, completely neutral, like not worried at all. She's like, I want to know, I am living in the second story of your house, and I'm there right now, but I need to get home for a doctor's appointment. So I just wanted to check, am I in your house or am I at my assisted living? So she was partly, she would stay in our second story, which we don't have a second story to our house, but she imagined she was living there. So when I'm saying goodbye to her on Sunday, say goodbye, Nancy. And she said, okay, come back again. But when you come back next time, I won't be here. I was like, are you not going to be here, And she's like, she couldn't really describe it, but she's like, I'm not going to be in this setting. So I said goodbye. And so it was the next morning that I get a call, you got to come back. And although her body was there, she was no longer there. So she passed away that morning. Peaceful, complete, done. So I thought that was an amazing story. And I like hearing things like that. It gives me some kind of like, oh, things like Jared's talked about, or, these things, traveling and completion and things like that. I don't know, it gives it some skin on the bones or something. Like, yes, I can hear that. It helps me somehow to have it more concrete. So that's my story about Nancy Carter. God bless Nancy on her going on. And so I'm happy to open the floor. Greg had brought something up earlier that he wanted to talk about, or maybe Greg and Faye will start there and go wherever you all want to go.
Hi.
Hey.
Greg and I are taking care of his 99-year-old mother, and she's pretty present here still. but she's been getting, having little bouts of not feeling well, and it's very scary because her body isn't handling it well, except she does bounce back from it. So I realized the big question was, I don't know what to do if she dies and I'm in the house. So it's like, how do
Mhm.
I find out the steps? We have some of her papers, and but we don't talk about these issues.
Mhm.
So what are the steps, and who do I call, and or we what do we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I forgot one thing with Nancy on Monday, a person that works with me as a care manager went to see her. Oh, they were waiting for the doctor to show up. And her doctor visited on Monday and said, oh, because we were asking if she could go on hospice. So she didn't have to keep going back and forth to the hospital. And so the doctor showed up at her room. He does house calls. And the doctor's like, no, she doesn't qualify for hospice. She's fine. Her vitals are fine. And, was basically saying, oh, the family would just want that because they don't want to bring her to the hospital again. Well, that's what hospice is about. But anyway, so we were going to go beyond him. He actually he referred us to hospice, but they never called because he didn't do it urgently, and she passed away the next day. But this person, Monica, who was with her on Monday waiting for the doctor, Nancy was laying there, looked like she was sleeping, and in her sleep, uh, her eyes closed, she verbalized. She said, "This seems like a good time to go." I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting thing." So that was Monday, and then Tuesday she passed. So Tuesday when she passed, they couldn't tell us if she passed away or not and any specifics because Nancy wasn't on hospice. So when someone is not on hospice and they pass away, the police are called and the coroner needs to get involved. So, at Nancy's, I get there and the police are there because they need to do an investigation to make sure there's no funny business, any, foul play. And then they call the coroner. Sometimes the coroner comes out. Sometimes over the phone, the coroner can go, yes, this appears to be natural causes. So as soon as they said it's natural causes, then we could call the mortuary and the mortuary comes out. So ideally, when someone is older, they would go on hospice, but that's usually you need a reason to go on hospice, right? You need a diagnosis, and sometimes like end of life is considered failure to thrive, and that means someone's eating less, maybe they're losing weight, maybe they can no longer get up and they're bedbound. So there's some things there. Now, if a person has other ailments like cancer or COPD, there's criteria for each of the diagnoses. So say she's 99 and if she's doing fine, doesn't look like to anybody that she's eminent, that's no problem. But if something happened and she's not on hospice and she passes away, you call 911 and you say, mother, you give them the name, she's 99, she passed away. I believe it looks to me like she's passed away. They'll send paramedics and they'll check for signs of life.
So did you say you call 911?
Yeah, you call 911. And so you report that this person appears not to be breathing, and you sort of let them know, like, we're not surprised. There's no foul play. She's 99. Um, so they'll send the paramedics out and probably the police, and they'll do a little investigation. Again, if she's not on hospice, they'll kind of investigate it, ask you some questions. They may ask for her doctor's name, but pretty quickly they'll contact the coroner and see if the coroner wants to come out, check it out, see if there's any foul play, and then they will. What they did here is they released the body to me. They just wrote like, here's the case number, everything's fine with us, we're clear, and then we call the mortuary. So If someone has a mortuary picked out already, you just call them. And if you don't, you can, the police will usually offer a resource. There's a local mortuary. And so you just call the mortuary and say this person passed away. Even if you've never contacted that mortuary before and don't have any arrangements, they will totally work with you. They'll come out and get the body, bring it to the mortuary, and then you'll go in and talk to them or on the phone after that and say, what do you want to do? You want to cremate, bury, things like that. So that piece. And then there's after someone passes, there's a long list, and that's probably Googleable. I probably have a document somewhere, but I can't tell you the exact link right now. But maybe there's a list like call Social Security, cancel their bank accounts, or it's freeze their bank accounts, stop their credit cards, things like that. My mind's not even getting around all those details, but you get there's business details that's handled. But as far as her care, it's really just calling 911. Now, as she gets older and you think, oh, she's having these signs that I talked about, right? She's losing weight or not eating as much, then you might get hospice involved. And so they'll come out to the house. That if she has Medicare, it's 100% covered by Medicare. They'll send a nurse out to the house like twice a week. You can get home health aid with that. A couple times a week to help bathe. They give you a social worker, a chaplain if you want. And so to avoid this back and forth to the hospital. Because when someone gets older and they're just dying of natural causes, or they're not, they don't need aggressive treatment or something, people don't usually want to go to the hospital at that point. So the nurses come out, and then if there's any questions in the middle of the night, they're available 24/7, either by phone or they can send it out. So it's a great service. And then if someone passes away, usually hospice can coach you on okay, these are the signs that someone's getting closer to the end of their life. And then when someone passes away, you call hospice, and hospice comes out instead of the police or the paramedics. And so then, the police and coroner don't need to get involved because they're on hospice and it's a known, they know it's expected. And so as soon as the hospice people will come out, social worker or nurse, they'll do a pronouncement, and then they will call the mortuary for you. And then they can also guide you through the next steps as well, kind of some of the business things. And hospice also provides grief counseling if someone wants it. Does that kind of answer your questions there?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a comment to make based on what you were saying, Faye, because I don't know. My questions were about who calls hospice and things like that. I just went on to my AI and asked what one does, and it does give a pretty thorough idea about the steps to take. So it's not like we're completely without any kind of an idea. I mean, it's somewhat accessible. Directly what the situation is. So we're not in this case, but my mom married a gentleman who passed away here at the house, which is where we're taking care of her. And his family did call hospice. They're over on the East Coast, so we're here in LA. And so that was done remotely, and things started happening around us, and we weren't really that involved in it other than it being here. And the thing about who calls hospice and what are the steps at that point, what are the varying considerations and what happens when they do pass away. And it was during the time of COVID, so it was a little awkward. Not that he died from COVID, but they had, okay, I'm going to digress a little bit. Both my parents, or he and my mom, both had COVID, and they were at Mountain View, which is a healthcare facility for whatever that. It isn't just for COVID, but it's like a nursing home kind of a situation. And and he was also in another facility for a while, and I really have very strong feelings against those places because they were not responsive. The doctors were absolutely not responsive to we. He was on. He's diabetic. I went and had to get medication. They were not providing medication for him, and he had to sign a waiver that said you will not do any of your own treatment. You will only do what we tell you you're going to do. And it seemed almost like they were, um, I don't want to say pushing for death, but it seemed like it was more like either they were looking to make a whole lot of money off of something like this, and they were waiting for people who were unattached to sign things over to. I don't know. It just seemed really pretty nasty. And I took insulin over there that disappeared. He never got that. And he was a physician, a GP, and he said he definitely did not want to spend his last time in a hospital situation for those kind of considerations. He wanted to die at home. And so that's where it did happen. And that's one of the reasons why we're here with Faye and my mom in this house, providing her an opportunity to be in a place. Not that she's that close to passing, but he provided for her this house, which is in a place where she can walk, and she has a caregiver come and all of that. And we're really avoiding those kind of situations because they can be really nasty. From our experience, it looks like that is definitely a possibility, and we don't have a lot of control once they're in it. And so I have a real I don't know how to say it without saying a euphemism, but it just gives me the creeps putting somebody that I love in a situation like that. And you probably have a different perspective on things like that because you're in a lot more control and you do it a lot, and you can see when it's working and probably when it's not working. You've probably seen the good side of it, but of those kind of care facilities. But I have I really feel like I need to control everything that's going on and really monitor things to protect my mom um, during this whole process. And she was going through, I'm sorry, I'm going through a long, convoluted story, but
No,
she
fine.
was, when he passed away, she was going through a lot of grief and despair about her own existence, kind of thing. And so we were very life affirming with her and creating situations that made it joyful to be alive. And it seems to be working really well. Um, so our participation through the grace of the light working and all of that kind of stuff, she's even starting to um, go to Jeffrey talks online, and she insists on being there. And so there's a lot of really good stuff that's happening by two ministers being in the house. And so for us, it's a very positive situation, but there is that sort of like unknown about when something serious is going to happen eventually, and there's a lot of legal technicalities that we're prepared for, but we're not. You know, it's kind of like I've never really looked at it with this kind of finality to it, just because I want to go with what's in front of us rather than project too far ahead into the negative to kind of keep the life affirming stuff as clear as possible. So that's kind of where we are with it. And Faye's a lot more responsible in, I suppose, in her consciousness. She's the adult in the group, and but at the same time, I know that I'm going to have to. She's my mom, and I'm going to have to be responsible. I have the power of attorney and all that stuff, so I'm going to be the one responsible. We do have uh, forest lawn. There are a lot of things that are already in place. It's just a matter of um, making sure we do everything. I'm sure there'll be some panic going on. Are we doing everything? Is it happening right? Is there legal ramifications about what we're not doing inadvertently, that kind of stuff. So that's where we are. And thanks for letting me share, but it's a very complicated kind of situation for us.
Thanks for sharing that, Greg.
So in the caregiving,
Yeah.
I know you've written a book, right? About this.
Yes.
Might have to get that. There might be some good
Right.
perspectives, but it's like right now she's very independent, bathes, eats, walks with the walker. But when she starts losing those abilities, if she does, what do we do? Or do we just have to hire more help? Or does she need to be somewhere? There's all these gray areas.
Okay. Well, you can keep showing up here too, getting information because there are some knowns and some things you go, well, we don't know exactly what it might look like. So it's fantastic that she's independent, she's walking, that you're focusing on thriving. That's amazing. That's what it's all about. I have been in some great care facilities, and I have been in some really not great care facilities. I have been in care facilities that I had to leave, and when I walked out, I was literally crying at the care that was given. It was so, like, the conditions were so poor. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this is the best we have for our humanity. So, I don't suggest people go into those if possible. Usually those are for people that don't really have a lot of money. And that's my suggestion of, like, save your money and get your documents in place and your people in place. So if you need something, if you need that kind of care, that they can access your money to get you in a nice place, right? So your mom's at your house. For years and years and years, I just kept people at home because that's where they said they wanted to be, and I didn't focus on assisted living. So it's fairly easy to keep someone at home with good care, with people that are able to do that, or able to get a little bit of help during that. There's very little that happens at the end of life that you can't just manage at home, especially when you can get hospice care in to coach you through that.
They only come in twice a week, you said?
Yes. So the professionals come in like twice a week. If the person is just doing fine, they're slowly declining, but they're just, they need a couple times a week, nurse looks in on them. Do you need any medicine? Do you need any supplies? How are your vital signs? And so this is like, ideally someone would get on, for long term. And hospice is approximately 6 months or less to live if the disease goes, in a normal progression. Now, some people are in hospice for a year or more if it's needed. So it doesn't have to be just 6 months. But hopefully people people sign on to hospice in time to have that service over time. There's some people like Nancy never got even a chance to get on hospice, but she passed peacefully. So that's the whole goal. So yes, so the nurses come out a couple times a week, more if you need them. So you two are responsible for her care. So if she needs personal care, like someone's bedbound and needs diaper change and things like that, so either you guys do it or you hire a caregiver to do that. So, a lot of people hire the caregiver if they can afford it, and then you remain her, in the relationship that you have now, her, son, daughter-in-law, and let the caregivers provide the personal care. And then when do you do that? I'll say usually the next step will present itself. Right? So with Nancy, she's going along. She's slowly declining. Like, oh, I'm listening to her all the time. Like, oh, my left knee is really bugging me, having a hard time standing up. Or like I'm going to the bathroom with my walker and I feel a little wobbly. So all those are like things I'm paying attention to, going, it's not yet, but those things are pointing to me so I could hear that there's some decline there. And then something will happen. Sometimes it's a fall, sometimes it's an infection, sometimes it's cognitive impairment. And you go, oh, so, you and Greg will look at each other going, this is the thing that Cheryl was talking about. It's here. Right. And so then sometimes that's just a little more caregiving that's needed. Sometimes it's just something to get her back, a little physical therapy, get her back to her baseline. At some point, if you go like this, she's really declining, she needs more help. And you're thinking, is this a time for hospice? You'd either reach out to her doctor and say, we would like a hospice evaluation. So you need a hospice referral from the doctor. And some doctors still don't really know a lot about hospice. And, unfortunately, it didn't matter as far as timing. But with Nancy's, doctor, I was really surprised to hear he was kind of pushing back about it. He was still going to refer, but a lot of doctors are still like that. They don't really know. So they need some encouragement, some pressure sometimes, or you can actually call a hospice agency yourself. There's lots of hospice agencies. You can pick any one you want. If you have a referral from someone, you go, hey, I use Visiting Angels and it was fantastic, or I use Vitas and they were great. Most hospice companies are just angels. Every so often you hear some, negative story, but overall, they're really all really good. They've got a calling for this work. And you can call the hospice company yourself and say, I'd like a referral. So hospice companies have a doctor, medical doctor, that's oversees the hospice. And so he can do the referral and they'll send out a nurse to do an assessment. And you tell them the symptoms and they check her out and say, yes, she's appropriate for hospice or no. And then they sign you on, you sign a bunch of documents, say, yes, I'm okay with Medicare paying for hospice. And then they start services right away. The beautiful thing about hospice is not only is it free, but the services are very timely. Like I'm always a person that's like, hey, if we need something, let's get it out there. But everything takes so much slower than I'd want it to be, except when you get on hospice, because they know time is of the essence. They're like, hey, you get on hospice, you need a hospital bed, you need a wheelchair, you need a walker, you need a shower chair, all these things. Like bam, in a couple hours, oxygen, everything's out to your house. All the medications, they deliver them to your house. So it's a great service. There's really, to me, no downside to it. The only downside could be if someone has a negative opinion about the word hospice, which sometimes happens. You don't always have to tell the person we're signing you up for hospice. You just do it and just tell the nurses like, don't use that word because they won't like it or they don't resonate with it. One person was like, I don't want to get on hospice. That's a give up program. And they're like, okay, no problem. You can go on palliative care instead. And that's you pay 20% and Medicare pays 80% or hospice is paid 100%. He's like, oh my gosh, sign me up for hospice then. So like he got over his ambivalence about hospice just because it was free. So, it's just a word, but it's an amazing support. And they can always like, if they go in hospice, you think they're declining and they start to get better, which sometimes happens on hospice. People start feeling better once they get on service. They can just always sign off and just stop hospice until they need it. So
what do they do? It's like a broad category and end of life stuff, but what about medication? Yeah. Are they involved in providing the medication, doing IVs or whatever? I don't know what.
Yes, that's a good question. And your story about your mom's husband, I can't really figure that out. It doesn't make sense to me as far as like a care place not providing medication.
Can I interrupt just for a second?
Sure.
Just for a second?
Yep.
Because it's 3 times I've seen this happen. 2 with his name was Pax, but also a friend of mine's sister was in a situation like that. They were not giving her pain medication. So everything I've seen has been super negative.
Yeah.
There were people in the beds beside that were in total agony that they were doing absolutely nothing for.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these are reputable places, supposedly.
Are they nursing homes?
I don't know the difference. Faye, do you know what
Oh, well, Mountain View it was because of COVID, it was on lockdown. We couldn't go there.
Okay.
their particular section of
Uh,
it, they had a COVID section that had 3 stages
so,
of I don't know, you had to wait. I don't know what the term for that is, but like you're there for 2 weeks and then you're moved to the next level, and then you're moved to the next level when you're clear. And
Right.
and then you can go out in the general population. So I don't know what but that
Okay.
was like nobody knew what was happening with COVID at the time. So
Right.
that's understandable, but that isn't the reason that everything was nasty there.
Yeah. Well, unless someone can't afford to be home, I don't really suggest people go to nursing homes. And you'll see often when someone goes to the hospital, the easiest thing for the hospital to do is discharge them to a nursing home, even if they don't need it. They don't think about, let's just get this person home. That's where they're going to get better. So you really have to be
assertive.
insistent, assertive, yes, to go like, no, we're going to get them home. And they can bring physical therapy out to the home. So, because nursing homes, they're busy. They don't, in the hospital and nursing home, they don't want you to get out of bed because they don't want you to fall. So then you lay there for weeks and, they're busy. So you're pushing your button and maybe it takes them 30 minutes to get you to just go to the bathroom. And then you're like, oh, I need some pain medicine. Oh, we'll get you. And then that takes a long time. So that's just not ideal. And because you and Faye are on the scene, you don't even have to deal with that. You just keep her at home. Hospice will help you manage the medication. Hospice is amazing at pain medication. They can also give pain medication that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. It's more easily accessible, but not to be abused or misused. It's more easily accessible with hospice. So you guys are there, you're overseeing everything. So you can call it control or oversight or deep caring or whatever you want to, but you can do all of that most likely at home. You can do IV antibiotics if needed. The only time you couldn't keep someone home is like if they have a trach. Well, might keep them home, but like it wouldn't be at say assisted living won't take a trach. But your mom probably she's not gonna need that though. So there's not very many things that you couldn't manage right there in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, if
So that
somebody
would be the vision.
Yeah, good vision. But if somebody's in the hospital, can they get hospice at a hospital? Or is it
sometimes hospitals have a hospice wing. I haven't seen them like in California, Southern California. I don't usually see them, but my father was in Florida and he went to the hospital and was at the hospice wing in the hospital. So hospice, Medicare pays for either hospice or hospital stay. So if someone's on hospice at home and they fall and break an arm and they need care for that, you go off hospice and you go to the hospital to get the care. So Medicare is paying for the hospital. And then when you come back home, you go back on hospice. So there may be, depending on where you live, there may be an inpatient, like hospital type of setting for hospice, but they usually make you like discharge from the hospital and get home. Sometimes you can sign the papers like while you're in the hospital and then it kicks in when you get home. It's a little bit, I've seen it done a couple different ways, but sometimes they make you be home before you actually sign in.
Right. We work with Kaiser. I don't know their system.
Yeah.
I just call them and find out.
Yeah. And Kaiser actually, I've had trouble with Kaiser services because I can never get a hold of a doctor when I need it. I can't call a doctor's office. I just have to call this 800 number. So that's a bit frustrating for me. But I have had clients on hospice in Kaiser, and they actually do provide a good service. So yeah, you could just call the customer service number at Kaiser. And Kaiser may also have a palliative care. So if there's some things like chronic diseases that your mom's handling, you could ask them about their palliative care and see, because sometimes that's not 24-hour nurses that you can call, but they will send some nursing out and some home care. It's kind of a step before hospice.
Great.
Yeah, so all the medications, if the medication should be covered under hospice, also covered 100% if it's related to their hospice diagnosis. So if they've got some random, they have COPD, but they've got, some other medication that's not with COPD, you may have to pay for that. But typically, like all the medications that will be needed are covered and supplied, and usually sent right to your house. And then they'll help you. They'll send you also, like hospice, when you sign up, they'll send you what's called a comfort kit that has a lot of different medications, so that like sometimes in the middle of the night, you go, hey, she's short of breath. They're like, and the nurse can guide you. Okay, go to your comfort kit, and you've got some medication there. You've got some atropine or whatever, and then they'll say how to give it to you, how to give it to the person, and if they need to come out, they'll come out. So it's really the kind of service that you want, and it's completely different end of life care than what you've seen at these places.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And if you have other questions, feel free to come back on another Tuesday.
That.
How long are these sessions? Just out of curiosity, when does this end today?
It's an hour long.
Okay.
Hour long, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, people do. If you need something, you can email me, and that's what I do for a profession. So if you go like seriously, like you want your hand held or do like assessments, I do that for a profession. But you're welcome to come here as many times as you want. Every Tuesday for an hour.
Can I share something about what I do with my mom? One of the things is we're getting a chance to sort out a lot of stuff that we accumulated along the way as I was growing up, and weird relationship stuff. Finally, it's all getting sorted out, and it's very beautiful. One of the things that I do is I put her to bed. Faye does once in a while, but when I put her to bed, it's a special thing where I create this scenario of perfect optimism in her mind, because she was going negative for such a long time, and this was kind of an antidote to that. Mm-hmm. And so we do a lot of visualization where we've created this scenario that we walk through every time, that she visualizes all these positive things in her life and creates this image around her. And then, but the thing that I added to it that might be of interest to you guys maybe is that at the end, because the cells regenerate all the time in the body, like in 7 years you get a whole new body kind of thing, that programming into the cells positivity and longevity and health has a lot to do with emotions. And if there's like this fear and negativity and that gets programmed, it seems to push toward illness, and having positive vision of that. So we've gotten to where we picked her favorite time in her life when she was the happiest, which was 17 years old for her, because she was going away to college, And so she visualizes that body that has all the encoding of perfected longevity and health and happiness that floats above her as she's going to be going to sleep. She visualizes that body merging down into the body that she has now, bringing with it all the encoding just in case the body now doesn't remember all of that good stuff. So, and it seems to have honestly made a difference. Her health seems to be improving after that. It's not like great, she's not 19 or anymore, but it turns out that positive visualization is really very effective. And she's a retired occupational, just to let you know a little bit about her. She would go on medical missions throughout her life with her church. And she is an occupational therapist, and she retired at the age of 90, which was 9 years ago. And so, this is somebody who's dyed in the wool, very into bringing people back from after having strokes and all of this kind of stuff. So she, like physician heal thyself kind of consciousness, occupational therapist heal thyself. And so she's very much into all of this stuff. And does physical activity. She walks a mile whenever she has a caregiver, which is 4 times a week. And, so she does a lot of herself. I mean, we're really lucky that she's this self-motivated. And
Mm.
and these little tricks that I've been doing for bringing the enthusiasm for life forward, it works, and she grabs onto it just fine. And so for what that's worth, that is something I think anybody can do, is visualize their happiest time in their life and kind of merge that into the present body, whatever state we're in now. As we're getting older, it's actually kind of useful.
That's a great idea. I love it, Greg. And yeah, you and her are blessed. I mean, so many people aren't open to new things, no matter what age they are, but especially when they get, like, it seems like above 80 or whenever. And if you track that person back, it's probably before then too. But they're like, I don't need your help. I'm 85. I've been doing it my way. So it's beautiful that she's just soaking this in and enjoying it and having this wonderful life. So good job.
Yeah, well, it was that way for quite a while. The way you're talking about, very independent, I think, is the way that we would like to look at it. But she's the trust started to open up as we were here, and when Faye moved in to help, that opened it up, because she was very amenable to having a female energy around and all of that, and with a clean slate and what have you. So, and Faye comes in like an angel, and it isn't the first time she's done it. So
it's beautiful. Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing.
A quick question. Have you heard anything? Oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but have you heard anything about Betsy Alexander? I think that I heard that she and Nancy were at the same place, weren't they?
Yeah. And Betsy's doing great. She's still alive and being Betsy.
Great.
Yeah, she's doing good. She's in the best place. She's in the best assisted living I know. Yeah, getting great care.
Good.
Yeah, so like to Betsy, yeah. All right, Bertie.
I just want to say that I want a son and daughter-in-law like the two of you. That's all.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your sharing your experience with Nancy. I was curious how that unfolded. I think that's an archive for MSIA. So thank you. And then thank the two of you. I learned a lot. I learned so much from this. So that was very, very helpful for me personally. So thank both of you. And Cheryl, of course. Your knowledge is just never ending. Thank you.
Thanks, Bertie.
Yes, and thank you, Cheryl, so much, honestly.
You're welcome. Karen.
There's something that's niggling at me that Greg said earlier about how it's almost like there's an expectation that it's going to be stressful at some point with your mom. And I have a front row seat to what Cheryl does, with her time and talents. And I can tell you that more often than not, it's actually really a beautiful time of life, and it's a beautiful process. So I just wanted to encourage you with these words that it is possible that the end of your mom's life could be one of the most beautiful and transformational times in your life, just to be able to be there with her as she moves from this life to whatever comes next. And it doesn't have to be scary or stressful or whatever those words are that I think a lot of times we think it will be. So I just encourage you to, show up on Tuesdays. There's so much richness that's shared and so much we can learn from one another, and so much support here that may help to make this time actually one that you'll treasure forever. So I just felt called to say.
Thank you, Karen. I will say, I'm going to just say the same thing, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Greg, I would say that it seems like people have their own journey, right? We have our own karma and the way our life ends and starts, and in the middle is, I would say, all purposeful. I've got to trust that it's on purpose. And it seems like, especially because you and Faye are on the scene and your heart is so huge and you're caring for her so beautiful, that your mom's experience, your experience with your mom is going to look really different and than what you've seen before. And that experience does not need to be yours. And you are creating it different. Your mom is different. She's making different choices. So, part of the visualization of having her, younger self encode. There's a PTS class called Joyful Transitions. And Jared talks about envisioning your own passing. So, the other end of the spectrum of envisioning how you want your passing to be, this beautiful time of completion of like, I am JR, I am living, loving. Like, I don't know of a better outcome, in this beautiful crescendo. So, that's my experience, and that's what I hold for people. And you know where to reach me if you need some support with that. Mary, you had your hand up. I know we're a couple minutes over, and that's if you need to leave, that's cool. But
we're over.
I can say no, I'm here for you.
I was just to the original question about, what do you do when they die? Like, what do you got to do? Just the cautionary tale that my experience with when my mom died is that this is Florida, and I realize each state may be different, but as soon as that death certificate was created, that went to Social Security, so that got shut down, and it went to the bank, and the bank locks down the account, and that was the account that we were using to pay all the bills and keep the lights on and stuff like that. So my sister and I didn't think about that. And also that power of attorney, people don't realize that as soon as the person dies, power of attorney goes poof. So it doesn't mean anything that you're all set up with the bank and stuff like that. It's like, no, sorry, they're dead. So what I wish we would have done is to have moved her money out, when it was really clear she was close, when the hospice nurse came and said, we're there. Just there's so many things around it that people don't know. So.
Can I ask you a question then? Yeah, Mary. About that moving the money here in California. I don't know if it's national that that you're allowed to gift somebody up to $19,000 for a year without any kind of reference to taxes. If you're moving the money, how do you do that without making it look like you're taking the money and that's suddenly income?
Right.
If you know.
Yeah, actually, this wasn't enough money that it was like a huge deal, but yeah, you're right. That does get into the whole gifting limits and crap. Not sure.
Okay. All right. Just curious, what you said you would rather have done it a different way. And I was just wondering if you had created a scenario, if it ever comes up again, how you might handle it at this point.
Yeah.
What I'll say about money, it's helpful when the person is alive to have enough money or access to their money to pay for their care. So if someone's not able to write checks and things like that anymore, if you have a financial power of attorney, or if you're a trustee on their trust, somehow to access their bank so you could pay for their care is super helpful. And sometimes you need to go to their bank, or, each person go to their bank and say, hey, if something happens to me, what document do I need to fill out now so that person can access it later? Because I've had some banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, those kind of banks, that someone will bring a financial power of attorney that's signed and notarized, but they say, no, they need that. That's not good at this bank. We have our own document, and you need to fill it out before that person actually is incapacitated. That's when the person's still alive. So at minimum, a financial power of attorney, so you can access their money, or maybe, they're getting close to death and their accounts will be shut down. You think, I'm going to need 15 grand to to pay for the funeral. So maybe you pay for the funeral out of that account, or move that, just the amount of money that's like under the gift limit, into an account that you can pay for their care. And then after they pass away, the documents like like a trust or a will come into effect, the person on their trust or will is able to access their funds after the death. So the power of attorney for healthcare and power of attorney for finances ends when the person dies, but then their other estate planning documents takes it in effect. So the biggest thing is like, make sure you're covered, make sure their care is covered, and all that's needed, even just a little bit after death. And then the rest of it will be taken care of in the estate planning. So
that was the disconnect that we had. We did have a trust set up, but that this was her personal, their family account, which was not part of the trust. And so that's why, we, by living off of that, partly is what was causing us the problem. So if we had done the right thing and had the bank account be under the trust, then the death would not have affected it and we'd have been okay.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. I love you. Go forward and thrive.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And thanks, Bertie, for having said that before. We'd love to have you come and be our child if you want.
I'm on my way.
All right. Take care.
All right.